What's up, Warriors fans? It's your main man, Max, here from Warriors Latest. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And now that the draft is over and we're heading into the free agency and trade period of the offseason, we got a lot to talk about. Now, I watched both days of the draft, and certain things surprised me, other things were to be expected. I think my biggest takeaway is that the Warriors didn't do anything stupid during the draft, they didn't jump the gun. But I'm still questioning why they made their specific picks at the end of the second round. They chose Alex Tui out of Australia and Will Richard out of Florida. Now with Tui, I kind of get it. He's a he's a high IQ forward, big 6'8". He's got that international experience kind of thing, and he's got that off the ball instincts. But is he going to make that immediate impact? I'm not entirely sure. Yes, he does fill a need, but is he going to fill a need immediately, or is he going to fill a need in the long term? Because with the Warriors, we're trying to win a title in the next 2 years. I don't know if Alice really contributes to those title aspirations compared to those who were left on the board. And for me, that's just frustrating because there were so many great players left on the board that could have been brought in, filled some holes, and really at least helped in the short term get the Warriors where they need to be, like such as drafting a big or getting a stretch big who can really create spacing that the Warriors need, or that could just body with some of the bigger centers the way that, say, a John Collins can, or a Clint Capella can, or so on. But outside of Tui, Will Richard, I have a little bit more understanding of because he is a champion. And that is the most important thing. You have to have a championship mentality in order to be a productive player with a top tier team, in my opinion. But he brings that championship mentality, which is great for the Warriors, I believe. But I don't know if that's going to immediately translate. He did win the title with Florida this past year, but is that going to translate to an immediate title with the Warriors next year or the year after? I'm not 100% sure, but what I also like is he's a 3-and-D guy and has a physical frame and consistent outside shot. Now, I look, who could he replace? And I could definitely see him replacing Moses Moody in terms of the rotation. That makes Moses Moody and his contract expendable in any potential trade, which in my mind is perfect. If you have a guy that can replace Moody, okay, let's throw his $11 million into a trade along with, say, Kuminga or Pods and see what we can get back for them. But as I said, the biggest thing that frustrated me with this draft is who the Warriors passed on, because my three favorite guys that they passed on in RJ Lewis, Hunter Dickinson, and Eric Dixon all got two-way deals immediately following the draft. Dixon got signed with the Lakers. Hunter got signed with, I believe it was the Pelicans he got a two-way deal with. And RJ Lewis got signed with the Jazz on a two-way deal. And I liked Lewis because he was that high upside kind of slashing scorer with a aggressive defensive mindset, could switch on a lot of guys, but he had a lot more polishing of his game that needed. But if you look at his stats coming from St. John's as well as his start over at UMass, he always showed improvement every single year. And the most important thing that people don't realize is he played under a good coach. And when you're playing under a good coach and developing under a good coach like Rick Pitino, that's going to pay dividends in the long term because, as they say, you're a product of your coach. You can be very talented, but if you're not under a great coach or under a coach that is a yes man, you might not translate to become the star that you want to be within the NBA. Now with Dickinson, yeah, he's a fifth-year center, but he played 3 years over at Michigan under Juwan Howard and Phil Martelli, and then another 2 over at Kansas under Bill Self. Now those are 2 great coaches that can really add to your game and help you polish it. And while he may be that older player, he is a 7-2 guy who can immediately contribute to the middle. Yes, he has traditional post skills that help, and he is a little slow-footed defensively, can't really stretch it, may have trouble at the wing, but for this Warriors team, they need to have the kind of big who can body with those centers in the league. They still haven't had a 7-footer since the days of DeMarcus Cousins, Zaza Pachulia, and even Andrew Bogut. And not having that is frustrating because it's like experiencing the same problem and trying the same solution over and over again and expecting different results. As I said multiple times, small ball isn't going to work if you want to win a title moving forward, and they need to find that center. Now, with Eric Dixon, yes, he is a smaller big man, but the biggest thing I like is the fact that he played 3 seasons under Jay Wright before playing his last 2 under Kyle Neptune. Now, when you're playing under Jay Wright, you may not become a star, but you're going to become at least a serviceable role player. And I could see Dixon becoming that serviceable role player alongside Draymond Green. If I remember correctly, the Warriors drafted another Jay Wright product a few years ago, and he was part of the All NBA rookie second team. And that just goes to show, even if you're drafted in the second round as a Jay Wright product, you're going to do all right. Now, verdict for me is the Warriors prioritized really high IQ guys over like guys that had high upsides, and it really left them with glaring needs for like front court size and rim protection. And I think just going into the rest of the offseason, they still have to address those holes. But with the flexibility now, with guys like Will Richard, who can replace Moses Moody, and Alex Tui, who could be just a guy that eventually replaces Jonathan Kuminga, I think they're at least somewhat on the right direction. But the biggest thing, or at least the most surprising thing about the draft, for me, wasn't a pick that the Warriors made. It was a pick another team made. And that team was the Portland Trailblazers. Now, in the biggest surprise in the entire draft, the Trailblazers selected Hansen Yang, a guy I like to talk about a lot, but he wasn't a first rounder. And this is back-to-back years now that the Blazers have selected big men with their first round pick. And it's good for the Warriors because, one, the Blazers have a surplus of big men. Right now, they have DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, Donovan Clingan, as well as Hansen Yang. And that's just like, wow. That is basically like shooting a fish in a barrel right now, because Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton are like expiring contracts and the perfect guys that the Warriors can go after in order to fill that void in the middle. Now, we both know that they can't develop a bunch of centers, and eventually they're going to have to get rid of some. So they could get maybe for pennies on the dollar in terms of a trade, and that's the one thing I like. Now, granted, this is probably going to require some maneuvering because Ayton's got a big contract. I believe it's $34 million next year, and that's going to take a lot of maneuvering for the Warriors to actually get him in and at least put him in the middle. And what I like about Ayton is he's a perfect pick and roll partner for guys like Steph. He can body with the big men in the league, but the issue is, for me, he's always streaky. And when you're streaky, that's just not going to work for the Warriors in the long term. Now, with Williams, he's the ideal defensive big, even though he is a bit undersized, and he fits that Warriors culture. He was part of that Celtics team that the Warriors beat in 2022, so he has that championship and playoff-ready experience. Now, I'm thinking, what can you do in terms of a trade? Now, in any potential trade, it would probably involve, say, Kevon Looney, Moody, Pods, maybe a future pick, and Jonathan Kuminga. And maybe they can maneuver it into a 3-team deal. But I don't think that Ayton without Kuminga involved in the deal is really affordable, which is why I also believe that Donovan Clingan may be one of those guys that they really go hard after, since, one, he's on a lesser contract, and two, if you just throw in some draft picks and maybe some salary relief, it gives them something they want now that the Blazers are looking to sell the team. And another thing is they want to develop Hansen Yang, since Joe Cronin, the GM over at the Blazers, had apparently been looking at Yang for the last 2 years, which sort of puts Klingon on the outs with the team. And that's the perfect opportunity for the Warriors to take advantage of. And say they bring in a guy like Klingon or even Robert Williams, they fill that void at center without having to give too much aside from future first round picks. And if you're giving up future first round picks, you might as well give them up for a guy who is a top 10 pick in Klingon and who's been a back-to-back champion, which he was over at UConn. And for me, that's a perfect culture fit, that's a perfect size fit, and it's exactly what the Warriors need. But when it comes to trading, we got to look at the biggest elephant in the room, and that is none other than Jonathan Kuminga. Now, I am going to talk about this until the cows come home and he is traded. Now, he's entering restricted free agency. Now that the market's really playing out, I'm a little worried about what the Warriors can get since the market is so little for him. And it's not like you can re-sign him and then just keep him on there and expect different things to happen. Look, the guy is a great player. He's got all-star talent. But he just does not fit with the Warriors system and what they're trying to do. Yes, he can guard multiple positions, but he can't really shoot from downtown, which is what the Warriors need right now. We all saw what happened in the Timberwolves series. He was great, averaged over 24 a game, really stepped up when Steph went down, but he still couldn't hit the three. And anytime he would drive to the basket, his shot got altered by Rudy Gobert or any other player that was down there. And it was just frustrating to watch because there was nothing they could do. It reminded me of when those 2008 Giants were playing and they lost Plaxico Burress. They had a great earth, wind, and fire combination in the running backs, but after Plaxico Burress went down, that is all they could do was constantly run the ball. And if your only way to attack and score is to attack the basket, they'll give you that space to shoot the three, knowing that you'll likely miss. And that's just a problem with Kuminga moving forward. But the other problem is the lack of trade partners. Now, the Bulls are interested and the Heat are interested. The Bulls don't really have much to offer for the Warriors in the short term and long term. Yes, they have Lonzo. Yes, they have Vucevic. And those are good players if they can't find what they want in the overall market. But I like what the Heat have to offer. Now, the Heat could offer, say, salary filler like Duncan Robinson, along with like young guys like Nikolai Jovic, as well as Jamie Jaquez. And those are two guys that can help the Warriors in the near term because they're guys with serious playoff experience, and Jovic can actually spread the floor. Now, worst case scenario, the Warriors turn this into a 3-team deal and find ways to acquire other players along with the ones that fit from the Heat, but don't fit from don't fit in terms of what they're looking for, so they trade those guys to a third team. Now, overall, we got to look at the reality, especially when it comes to the post-draft reality. The draft addressed a lot of our wing depth that we had, but left the center position completely void, and there's still no rim protection moving forward. Now, like I said, the Warriors need to trade for an offensive center. We both know it. I feel like it's just a frustrating banging my head against a wall kind of thing. You're just over and over and over because they continue to make the same mistake and refuse to address the issue. But once they address that issue, I guarantee they're going to become that serious championship contender that are going to be trouble for teams like the Timberwolves, teams like the Mavericks, teams like the Rockets, even though they've had the Rockets number for the last few years. Now that they have Durant, they're going to become a bigger problem. And teams like OKC, now that they're the reigning champion. Now, once they get that addressed, they will be able to at least compete on a highest level. But they also need to find ways to acquire guys that can contribute now in any way possible. If that means sacrificing the future, so be it. It's better to have championships now and sacrifice maybe 2 to 4 years in the future than have nothing to show for it and then get mediocre draft picks down the line. Because if the Warriors want one more title run with Steph, bold moves must happen now. And for Warriors Latest, I'm your main man, Max, And as always, go Dubs.